While crossing an empty park, a businessman found a blind, lost girl holding tightly to a little lion. Unknowingly, that simple act of kindness would lead him to rebuild his life and discover a new purpose within it. Years later, she would call him father, and together they would see the world reborn through her eyes. Robert Maxwell observed the urban landscape of London from the window of his office on the top floor of the building, housing the headquarters of Tech Global, one of the country's largest technology companies. At 42, he had built an empire from scratch, but he felt an inexplicable emptiness that no professional achievement could fill. The May sky presented a rare combination of intense blue without the usual pollution that covered the metropolis. He glanced at his watch, 3:30 p.m. An unusual restlessness dominated him. For the first time in years, he felt the urge to leave early. He picked up the phone and called his secretary. "Martha, cancel my appointments for the rest of the day. I'm leaving early." "But sir, you have the investor meeting at 5 p.m. and..." "Reschedule it." Say something unexpected came up. Leaving the building, Robert dismissed his driver. He wanted to walk to feel the city. His steps led him to Hyde Park, a green oasis in the grey heart of the English capital. The park was relatively empty for a Thursday afternoon, with only a few joggers, mothers with strollers, and retirees enjoying the sun. That's when he heard it. A soft cry, almost imperceptible, coming from near the lake. He followed the sound until he found a small girl, sitting alone on the grass. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. She wore a simple school uniform, holding a worn teddy bear and a white cane beside her. Her face was streaked with tears. "Mummy." "Where are you, Mummy?" she called softly, her voice choked with sobs. Robert hesitated. He didn't know how to deal with children. In his meticulously planned life, there had never been room for family. He looked around. No one seemed to be looking for a child. "Hello," he finally said, approaching carefully. "Are you lost?" The girl turned her face towards the voice, but her eyes didn't focus on him. Robert realized she couldn't see him. "Who are you?" she asked, startled. "My name is Robert. I'm here to help." "What's your name?" "Sophia," she replied, clutching the teddy bear to her chest. "I can't find my mummy." "What happened, Sophia?" "We were walking. I let go of her hand to touch a flower that smelled nice. Then I couldn't find her anymore." The girl's voice trembled. "I've called a lot, but she doesn't come." Robert sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "How long have you been here?" "I don't know." "A long time," Sophia sniffled. "I'm hungry and thirsty." Robert looked at his watch. It was already past 4 p.m. The girl had probably been there for hours. "I'm going to help you find your mummy, okay?" "What's her name?" "Louise. Louise Oliver." Robert took out his phone and called the park administration. They informed him that no one had reported a lost child that day. Strange, he thought. How could a mother not notice she lost her daughter, especially a blind child? "Sophia, do you have a phone number I can call?" "From your home or a relative?" The girl shook her head negatively. "Mummy says I'm too small to memorize numbers." Robert noticed the girl was pale. She looked fragile. Her shoes were worn, her uniform a little too big for her slender body. Her stomach audibly rumbled. "Would you like something to eat while we wait? There's a snack bar nearby." Sophia nodded timidly. Robert helped her up and noticed she held the white cane with the dexterity of someone accustomed to it. They walked slowly to the snack bar. While the girl eagerly ate a sandwich, Robert called the police. The officer who answered said they would send a patrol car to the park. "Sophia, can you tell me more about where you live?" "Which neighborhood?" "I live in Brixton in a small house." She paused. "But now we're in a room Mummy rented near her work." "And where does your mummy work?" "In a place with loud music. She cleans and serves drinks." Sophia took a big bite of her sandwich. "She works at night. During the day, she cleans big houses." The police arrived 20 minutes later. 2 officers, a man and a woman, approached. The female officer, who introduced herself as Officer Fiona, sat beside Sophia and spoke gently with her. Meanwhile, the other officer, Sergeant Mark, asked to speak with Robert privately. "You did well to call us," the sergeant said. "We'll need to take the girl to social services. They have ways of locating the mother there. Can't you just look for this woman, Louise Oliver, in the system?" "We're already doing that." The sergeant consulted his tablet. "We found a Louise Oliver, 28 years old with a record of minor offenses. Shoplifting mainly. No fixed address registered recently. Robert felt a pang in his chest. What would happen to Sophia if her mother wasn't found? And where will you take her now? To a temporary shelter, until we locate a family member. At that moment, Sophia, who was talking to Officer Fiona, turned towards them. I don't want to go to the shelter, she said, her voice trembling. I want to stay with Robert. He's nice to me. Robert was surprised. The girl barely knew him, but she already showed trust in him. Sophia, we need to find your mummy, the officer explained. In the meantime, you'll be in a safe place. No, please. The girl started to cry. There are children there who laugh at me because I can't see, and the adults shout a lot. Robert realized she had been in a shelter before. His heart ached seeing the fear in the girl's unfocused eyes. The sergeant seemed inflexible. I'm sorry, Mr. Maxwell, but these are the procedures. Robert made an impulsive decision, something completely out of character for his methodical nature. What if I take temporary responsibility for her, until we find her mother? The officers exchanged surprised glances. It's not that simple, the sergeant said. It would require a court order, documentation. I'm sure we can sort this out, Robert interrupted, already grabbing his phone. He dialed his personal lawyer, Mr. Sterling. Edward, I need an urgent favor. Over the next hour, a series of phone calls was made. Mr. Sterling activated his contacts in the judiciary. Robert, using his influence as a respected businessman, managed to get a duty judge to grant an emergency temporary guardianship, valid for 30 days, upon the commitment to continue the search for the child's mother. While the officers finalized the paperwork, Sophia remained seated, quiet but no longer crying. She seemed exhausted. Sophia, Robert approached hesitantly, you're going to stay with me for a few days, until we find your mummy. Is that okay with you? The girl extended her small hand towards his voice. Can I bring Toddy with me? She asked, referring to the teddy bear. Of course you can, Robert replied, gently holding her outstretched hand. Sophia gave a timid smile, the first since he had found her. It was already getting dark when they left the park. Robert realized he had no idea how to care for a child, much less one with special needs. His penthouse apartment, with its minimalist design and expensive artwork, was not a place designed for children. But now, for some reason he didn't fully understand himself, he felt he needed to protect that little girl lost in the park. The taxi stopped in front of the luxurious building in the Kensington neighborhood. The doorman looked surprised at his boss arriving, accompanied by a child. Robert never brought visitors home, much less children. Welcome to my home, Sophia, Robert said as they entered the elevator. It's a new place for you, so I'll help you get to know everything, okay? Sophia squeezed his hand and nodded, her face revealing a mixture of fear and curiosity. You smell nice, she commented unexpectedly. You smell like a shopping center, clean and expensive. Robert smiled, surprised by the girl's keen perception. At that moment, as the elevator ascended to the penthouse, he couldn't imagine how that casual encounter would change his life forever. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you are watching us from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you will ever hear in your life. Robert's apartment was a sophisticated 300 square meter space with double-height ceilings, designer furniture, and a breathtaking view of the city. Sophia, holding his hand tightly, seemed small and vulnerable in that grand space. It's very quiet here, she commented, tilting her head as if trying to catch some familiar sound. I live alone, Robert explained. I've never needed much noise. He slowly guided her through the apartment, describing each room. Sophia touched the furniture, the walls, creating her own mental map of the place. This will be your room for now, he said, leading her to the guest bedroom. Tomorrow we can adapt it better for you. Sophia sat on the king-size bed, sinking slightly into the soft mattress. It's very big, she commented, running her hand over the Egyptian cotton sheet. I feel like I'll get lost in here. That innocent observation made Robert realize how different his world was from hers. He suddenly felt inadequate. Are you hungry? He asked, trying to sound natural. Sophia nodded timidly. Robert realized he didn't have suitable food for a child. His refrigerator usually contained only mineral water, a few fruits, and leftovers from meals ordered from fine restaurants. I'll order something for us to eat. While they waited for the food, Robert watched Sophia exploring the room, her small fingers gliding over surfaces, recognizing textures. She found a crystal vase and touched it delicately. "Is it beautiful?" she asked. The question caught Robert off guard. How to explain visual beauty to someone who had never seen? "It's transparent. It shines when light passes through it," he replied, feeling the inadequacy of his words. "Like water in the sun," Sophia smiled. "Mummy explained to me once what water in the sun is like." "Yes, exactly like water in the sun." Dinner arrived. Robert had ordered various pastas, salads and desserts, not knowing what Sophia liked. He watched, impressed, as she navigated the table, finding the cutlery and glass without difficulty, after a brief tactile reconnaissance. "You manage very well on your own," he commented. "Mummy says I need to manage on my own because she can't always be with me." Sophia spoke naturally, without self-pity. "She taught me to do many things." After dinner, Robert realized another problem. Sophia had no nightclothes, no toothbrush, no personal items other than the school uniform she was wearing and her teddy bear. "I think we need to improvise tonight," he said. "Tomorrow we'll buy everything you need." He found a clean t-shirt that fit her like a dress. While the girl was getting ready for bed in the ensuite bathroom, Robert called Martha, his secretary. "I need you to cancel all my appointments for the next few days," he instructed, "and find the best specialists in children with visual impairments. I also need information about specialized schools." "Has something happened, sir?" Martha's voice didn't hide her surprise. "Let's say yes. I'll explain later." He hesitated. "Oh, and one more thing. I need you to buy clothes and accessories for a 7-year-old girl. Small size, she's delicate." Hanging up, Robert found Sophia already in bed, hugging her teddy bear. She looked even smaller in the huge bed. "Will you stay here until I fall asleep?" she asked, her voice sleepy. Robert had never put a child to sleep. He sat awkwardly on the edge of the bed. "Do you want me to tell you a story?" he offered, vaguely remembering that's what people did. Sophia nodded, her unfocused eyes turned towards the ceiling. "What story do you know?" Robert realized he didn't know any children's stories. His childhood hadn't been filled with them. Orphaned at 10, he had grown up in institutions until he got a scholarship that changed his life. "Actually, I don't know many," he confessed. "How about you tell me a story?" Sophia smiled and began to narrate a peculiar version of Cinderella, where the protagonist couldn't see but recognize the prince by his scent. Robert listened, fascinated by the adaptation the child's mind had created, inserting her own reality into the fairy tale. When she finally fell asleep, Robert remained there for a few minutes, watching her peaceful slumber. A strange sensation enveloped him, a mixture of responsibility, tenderness, and concern that he had never felt before. The next morning, Robert woke to the sound of cautious footsteps in the corridor. He found Sophia fumbling along the walls, trying to orient herself. "Good morning," he said softly so as not to startle her. "Good morning," she replied, turning towards the voice. "I'm looking for the bathroom. I'll help you." After breakfast, the doorbell rang. It was Martha, laden with bags. "I brought everything you asked for," she said, looking curiously at Sophia, who was sitting on the sofa. "And I've scheduled appointments with a pediatric ophthalmologist and a psychologist, specializing in children with visual impairments. Both can see her today." "Excellent," Robert replied. "Thank you, Martha." The secretary approached Sophia. "Hello, dear. My name is Martha." Sophia turned towards the voice. "Hi, I'm Sophia." "You have a nice voice. You sound like a kind teacher." Martha smiled, charmed by the observation. "I brought some clothes for you. Do you want to try them on?" The following hours were dedicated to adapting the apartment for Sophia. Martha, who had young nephews, proved to be a valuable ally, helping to organize clothes so Sophia could identify them by touch, labeling objects in Braille, which Martha had ordered from an association for the blind, and teaching Robert about a child's basic needs. "You're going to need help," Martha commented. "You should hire a specialized nanny." "I'm thinking about it," Robert replied, watching Sophia, who was exploring her new clothes and toys with delight. "But for now, I want to learn to do this myself." In the afternoon, they visited Dr. Camilla Barnes, one of the country's most respected pediatric ophthalmologists. After a thorough examination, the doctor confirmed what Sophia had already mentioned. Her blindness was caused by retinopathy of prematurity. She was born in the 6th month of gestation, Dr. Camilla explained. The retinopathy occurred because the blood vessels in the retina didn't develop properly. But there are interesting advances in this area. Is there any chance she'll ever see? Robert asked while Sophia explored a tactile model of a human eye in the consulting room. Science is advancing rapidly. There are studies with retinal implants that have shown promising results. It's not a cure, but it can enable the perception of light and shapes in some cases. Robert felt a hope he didn't expect to feel. What would we need to do? It's a long road. First, we would need more specific exams to determine if she would be a viable candidate. Then there are waiting lists to participate in clinical trials, or alternatively, experimental procedures in private clinics abroad, but at extremely high costs. Money is not a problem, Robert stated. With determination, the doctor smiled gently. Mr. Maxwell, I understand your enthusiasm, but we need to be realistic. The expectation of full visual recovery is practically nil. We're talking about possible improvements in the perception of light and shadows, at best. Any improvement would be significant for her, Robert replied, looking at Sophia. From the clinic, they went directly to Dr. Patricia Norton's office, a psychologist specializing in children with visual impairments. While Sophia spoke privately with the psychologist, Robert waited in the waiting room, answering work emails on his tablet. After the session, Dr. Patricia spoke with him privately. Sophia is an extraordinarily resilient child, she commented. She has developed impressive coping mechanisms for someone so young. But I also detected signs of neglect and possible post-traumatic stress. What kind of signs? She mentioned prolonged periods alone at home. She talked about noisy men who visited her mother and made her cry, and most concerning, she described episodes of hunger and housing insecurity. Robert felt a mixture of anger and sadness. How could anyone neglect such a special child? The mother is being sought by the police, he explained. I have temporary guardianship, but I understand. Regardless of the legal outcome, Sophia will need stability and consistent psychological support. I suggest weekly sessions and perhaps specialized occupational therapy. On the way back to the apartment, Sophia was strangely quiet. Is everything all right? Robert asked. The doctor asked things about my mummy, Sophia replied. About the men who came to our house. About the man who shouted at Mummy about money. Robert felt a chill. He needed to know more, but he didn't want to pressure the child. Do you want to tell me about it? He asked softly. Sophia was silent for a few seconds, hugging her teddy bear. There was a man who said he would take something precious from Mummy if she didn't pay what she owed. Her voice was almost a whisper. He said there were people who paid a lot for pretty little children. Mummy cried a lot after he left. Robert felt his blood run cold. The implications of that sentence were terrifying. Could it be that Louise had abandoned her daughter to protect her from a worse fate? At that moment, looking at the girl beside him, Robert made a silent decision. Whatever happened, he would not leave Sophia helpless again, and he would do everything in his power to understand what had really happened to Louise Oliver. 2 weeks had passed since Sophia entered Robert's life. The apartment, once impeccably minimalist, now showed signs of a child's presence. Braille labels on furniture and appliances, tactile toys organized in accessible baskets, and a system of colored ropes installed on the walls that helped Sophia navigate the rooms without constantly fumbling. Robert had taken a leave of absence from his CEO position, something unimaginable just a month before. Shareholders were alarmed, but he was inflexible. For the first time in his adult life, his company was not his absolute priority. On that sunny morning, Robert watched Sophia eating breakfast, now completely adapted to the domestic routine. She ate alone, locating food on her plate using the clock technique that the occupational therapist had taught her. "You're looking at me," Sophia said suddenly, interrupting his thoughts. "I can feel when someone watches me," Robert smiled, still surprised by the girl's keen perception. "I was just thinking about how quickly you learn to manage here." "It's easy when good people help us," she replied, with a wisdom that seemed beyond her 7 years. The doorbell rang. It was Mr. Sterling, the lawyer, who had come personally to bring news about the case. "Good morning, Sophia," he greeted. The girl already recognized him by his voice. "Hi, Mr. Sterling, would you like some coffee?" "I can pour it without spilling," Mrs. Jenkins taught me. Mrs. Jenkins was the housekeeper Robert had hired, a patient lady who taught Sophia to perform small household tasks, respecting her desire for autonomy. "I'd love some." "Thank you." The lawyer smiled, exchanging a significant look with Robert. While Sophia, proud, served coffee under Mrs. Jenkins's supervision, the two men moved away to talk. "We have news," Mr. Sterling said in a low voice. "The police have located Louise Oliver." Robert felt a tightness in his chest. During these 2 weeks, he had grown so fond of Sophia that the idea of separating from her seemed unbearable. At the same time, he knew the girl deserved to be with her mother if that were possible. "Where is she?" "How is she?" "Hospitalized at St. Thomas's Hospital. She was found unconscious in a boarding house room in the city center. She tried—" Mr. Sterling lowered his voice even further, "to take her own life. A neighbor found her in time." Robert closed his eyes, feeling a mixture of compassion and anger. "Is she out of danger?" "Yes, physically stable. But she's under psychiatric care." When she learned that Sophia was being sought, she became extremely agitated. She confessed that she deliberately left her daughter in the park. "So it was intentional abandonment," Robert murmured, his anger rising. "It's not that simple," the lawyer pondered. "She said she was being threatened by loan sharks. She owed a significant amount and couldn't pay it. They threatened to take something precious from her as payment. She interpreted this as a threat to Sophia." Robert remembered what Sophia had said about the man who shouted at Mummy about money. The story was starting to make sense. In a disturbing way. "She believed that abandoning her daughter in a public place was the only way to protect her," Mr. Sterling continued. "She hoped someone would find her and take her to a shelter. She didn't count on the fact that Sophia, being blind, wouldn't be able to effectively ask for help or identify where she was." Robert looked at Sophia, who was humming as she meticulously arranged biscuits on her plate. How could anyone simply abandon that child? "What's the legal situation now?" "Complicated. Technically, it's a case of abandonment, which could result in the loss of parental rights. But there's also evidence that Louise was acting under duress and intended to protect her daughter, albeit mistakenly." "And what happens to Sophia while this is being resolved?" "For now, your temporary guardianship remains valid. The judge has scheduled a hearing for next week." The lawyer hesitated. "Louise is asking to see her daughter." Robert felt an internal conflict. Part of him wanted to protect Sophia from more suffering, but he knew he had no right to prevent the meeting. "When?" "She's still hospitalized, but doctors authorize a supervised visit. Perhaps tomorrow or the day after." After the lawyer left, Robert sat beside Sophia on the sofa. She was watching an audio-described program on television, something about marine animals. "Sophia, we need to talk." The girl turned off the TV sound with the adapted remote control. "Is it about my mummy?" she asked directly, surprising Robert. "How do you know?" "I heard a bit of the conversation. Not everything, but I heard you say abandon and protect, and your heart is beating faster. I can hear it when I'm close." Robert took a deep breath. "Yes, they found your mummy. She's in the hospital. Is she sick?" Sophia's concern was genuine. "She was, but now she's getting better." Robert chose his words carefully. "Sophia, your mummy wants to see you." "Do you want to see her?" The girl was silent for a moment, her small fingers caressing the teddy bear. "I do," she finally replied, "but I'm a little scared." "Scared of what, darling?" "Scared she'll leave me somewhere again." Her voice trembled slightly. "Here with you I feel safe." Robert felt a lump in his throat. He enveloped Sophia in a protective hug. "No one is going to leave you anywhere, I promise. I'll be with you the whole time." The next day, Robert took Sophia to the hospital. He had spoken with doctors and social workers who prepared both mother and daughter for the reunion. Sophia was nervous but determined. She wore a new dress with small embossed flowers that she loved to touch. In the room designated for supervised visits, Louise Oliver waited. Robert saw a thin, fragile-looking young woman, deep dark circles under eyes that must have once been beautiful. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her hands wouldn't stop trembling. But her eyes lit up when Sophia entered. "Sophia," she called, her voice choked. "My daughter." The girl turned her head towards the familiar voice. "Mummy?" Robert observed the reunion with mixed emotions. There was a visible connection between mother and daughter, despite everything. Sophia ran into Louise's embrace, who held her tightly, crying openly. "Forgive me, my child," Louise sobbed. "Forgive me for leaving you." "It's okay, Mummy." Sophia caressed her mother's face, wiping her tears. "Don't cry. Robert took care of me. He's very nice." Louise looked up at Robert for the first time. There was gratitude, shame, and something else in her gaze, a careful assessment of the man who was caring for her daughter. "Thank you," she said simply. "For looking after her?" Robert nodded, still unsure how to feel about Louise. For the next hour, he watched the interaction between mother and daughter. Despite her mistakes, it was evident that Louise loved Sophia deeply. The girl talked about her new room, about the special school she was attending, about the new friends she had made. "You seem happy," Louise commented, with a mixture of joy and sadness. "I am," Sophia replied honestly. "But I miss you, Mummy." When the visit ended, Sophia hugged her mother for a long time before joining the social worker who would take her for a snack, giving Robert and Louise a few minutes alone. "I want to thank you again," Louise began as soon as Sophia left. "Not just for taking care of her, but for treating her well. Sophia deserves all the best." "She's an extraordinary child," Robert replied. "Intelligent, sensitive, courageous. She takes after her father," Louise said with a sad smile. "He was like that. He died when she was 2, a construction accident." Robert felt his initial hostility diminish. There was much more to Louise and Sophia's story than he had imagined. "The doctors told me about your situation," he said cautiously. "About the debts, the threats." Louise lowered her eyes, embarrassed. "After Gabriel died, everything fell apart. The compensation ran out quickly. I had to work 2-3 jobs, but it was never enough. Sophia needed special care, an adapted school. I started borrowing money from loan sharks." "Yes," her voice trembled. "At first they were small amounts. Then the debt grew. The interest was impossible. And when I couldn't pay anymore, they threatened Sophia." Louise nodded, tears returning. "Not literally. They said they would take something precious to cover the debt. It could be anything, my TV, my documents, my phone. But the way he looked at Sophia's room," she shivered. "I had heard stories about girls disappearing. I couldn't risk it. So you left her in the park. It was the hardest decision of my life. I thought someone would find her quickly, that she would be taken to a safe place. I planned to turn myself in to the authorities once I knew she was protected, but..." She took a deep breath. "I couldn't bear it. The guilt was unbearable." Robert understood with painful clarity that Louise was not a negligent mother. She was a desperate woman who had made a terrible choice in an impossible situation. And somehow her desperate plan had worked. Sophia was safe. "How much do you owe?" he asked abruptly. Louise stared at him, surprised by the direct question. "Why?" "Just answer. £15,000. But with the interest they charge, it must already be more than double." An insignificant amount for Robert, but an impossible sum for a woman in Louise's situation. "I'll pay your debt," he declared. "And I'll do more than that. I'll help you rebuild your life." Louise's eyes widened in disbelief. "Why? Why would you do that for me? You don't even know me." Robert thought of Sophia, of how that child had brought light into his empty and solitary existence. "Because your daughter changed my life," he replied honestly, "and because I believe everyone deserves a second chance." At that moment, something indefinable passed between them, a mutual understanding, a recognition that their lives were now intertwined in ways neither of them could have predicted. 3 months had passed since Sophia's reunion with Louise. Robert not only paid off the debt to the loan sharks, but also used his influence to ensure they would never bother Louise or anyone else again. A serious conversation with Chief Inspector Maurice Roberts, an old college friend, resulted in an investigation that ultimately dismantled a loan shark operation that had terrorized residents of several outer boroughs. During this time, Sophia's guardianship remained with Robert, but with regular visits from Louise, who was progressing rapidly in her psychological treatment. Robert rented a small apartment for her in a safe neighborhood, close to both the hospital where she received treatment and his apartment, to facilitate visits with her daughter. On that August afternoon, Robert was in his office at Tech Global, to which he had partially returned, delegating many of his previous duties to dedicate more time to Sophia. He was observing the city from the panoramic window when his phone rang. It was Mrs. Jenkins. "Mr. Maxwell, Louise is here to visit Sophia, as arranged. But she brought a surprise. It seems important." "I'm on my way," he replied, intrigued. Upon arriving home, he found Louise and Sophia sitting on the living room sofa, both with animated expressions. Louise looked different. She had regained weight, her face had color, and her hair, now well groomed, fell in soft waves around her face. She wore simple but elegant clothes, a gift Robert had insisted on giving her when she left the hospital. "What's going on here?" he asked, curious about the celebratory atmosphere. Louise stood up, holding an envelope. "I have news, Robert. I got a job." "That's wonderful," he exclaimed, genuinely happy for her. "It's not just any job," Louise continued, visibly proud. "It's at the Association for Children with Visual Impairments. I'll be working as an administrative assistant, but I'll also help with activities with the children. Mummy is going to work helping children like me," Sophia explained, beaming. "She always knew how to take care of me, even when it was difficult." Robert felt a wave of admiration for Louise. Despite everything she had been through, she was rebuilding herself and transforming her experience into something positive. "That's truly impressive. Louise, congratulations." "There's more," she said, extending the envelope. "I've been accepted into a technical course in special education. It's at night after work. It will be tough, but it will be worth it." Robert looked at the documents, realizing that she had achieved this on her own merit, without his interference. "I'm very proud of you," he said sincerely. "I couldn't have done it without your help," Louise replied, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made him look away, suddenly aware of a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. "You gave us a second chance. What do you say we celebrate?" he proposed, addressing Sophia as well. "We can go out for dinner tonight." "To the restaurant with music?" Sophia asked excitedly. It was a bistro where a pianist played during dinner, and the girl loved the sensory experience. "Exactly that one," Robert agreed. "And afterward, if you're not too tired, we can stop by the ice cream parlor." That night, as they dined to the soft sound of the piano, Robert watched Louise and Sophia interacting. There was a deep connection between them, a language of their own made of small gestures and code words. Louise discreetly cut the food on Sophia's plate, but allowed the girl to serve herself, respecting her autonomy. Sophia, in turn, shared small discoveries from her day with her mother, demonstrating a trust that only exists when there is genuine love. "You're quiet," Louise commented, when Sophia was distracted by the pianist, who had invited her to play a few notes. "Just watching you two," he replied honestly. "It's beautiful to see the bond you have." Louise smiled, a little melancholic. "It's always been just the two of us since Gabriel left. I guess that created a special connection." She paused. "But now there are three of us, aren't there?" The question caught Robert off guard. Indeed, in recent months, they had developed an almost familial dynamic. Robert continued to have guardianship of Sophia, but Louise was increasingly present in her daughter's life. They often dined together, shared weekend outings, and Robert had even started helping Louise with her studies. "Yes," he agreed after a moment, "I guess we are." On the way home, Sophia fell asleep in the back seat of the car. Robert and Louise continued in comfortable silence, occasionally exchanging glances in the rearview mirror. "She's tired," Louise commented. It was quite a day for her. "For all of us," Robert replied. "I'm thinking of taking a vacation, taking Sophia to see the coast. She's never seen the sea." "Technically, she's never seen anything," Louise observed with a slight smile. "You know what I mean. To feel the sea, hear the waves, touch the sand." "She would love it," Louise agreed. "Gabriel and I always dreamed of taking her to the beach." Robert hesitated for a moment before making the proposal. "You could come too. If you'd like, of course. Sophia would be very happy." Louise stared at him, surprised and touched by the invitation. I would like that," she finally replied. 2 weeks later, they traveled to a small guest house in Cornwall on the southwest coast of England. Robert rented a secluded beach house with direct access to the sand. For Sophia, it was a transformative experience. The girl spent hours exploring the texture of the sand, listening to the sound of the waves, feeling the salty water on her skin. "Mummy, Robert, "The sea is so big," she exclaimed, enchanted. "I can hear it breathing." Robert and Louise took turns taking her into the water, always with care. Sophia showed a mixture of fear and fascination for the ocean. At night, sitting on the veranda while Sophia slept exhausted from playing, the adults talked about the future. "The final guardianship hearing is scheduled for next month," Robert commented, observing the stars. "I know," Louise replied, her voice calm but determined. "I've been thinking a lot about it. And I think Sophia is happy with you." She took a deep breath. "You can offer her opportunities that I never could. The special school, the medical treatments, the possibility of that retinal implant the doctors mentioned." "Louise, let me finish," she asked, turning to face him. "I'm not giving up on my daughter. I would never do that. But I'm thinking about what's best for her. And what do you think that is?" "I think Sophia deserves to have both of us in her life, legally." She hesitated. "I'm considering proposing shared guardianship." Robert felt simultaneously relieved and surprised. "You would trust me that way?" Louise smiled, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Robert, you saved my daughter when I couldn't. You saved me too, in a way. Of course, I trust you." Something changed between them at that moment, a mutual recognition that they had crossed an invisible line. Robert approached, hesitant. Louise did not recoil. When their lips met for the first time, it was as if a final piece of a complex puzzle had finally fallen into place. The next day, while Sophia played in the sand under Louise's watchful eye, Robert received a call from Dr. Camilla, the ophthalmologist. "Mr. Maxwell, I have extraordinary news. A spot has opened up in the experimental retinal implant program, and based on Sophia's exams, I believe she would be an ideal candidate." Robert's heart quickened. "When? How?" "The team at the Institute of Vision at University College London has received funding for a new phase of testing. They are selecting only 5 patients across the UK, and Sophia meets all the criteria. But I need your answer as soon as possible. What are the chances of success? As I explained before, we're not talking about full vision recovery, but in successful cases, patients can distinguish shapes, lights, sometimes even basic colors. For someone who has never seen like Sophia, it would be a revolutionary change. And the risks? They exist, as with any surgical procedure, but they are minimal compared to the potential benefits." Hanging up, Robert called Louise and explained the situation. Together, they decided to talk to Sophia before making any decision. "Sophia," Robert began, sitting beside her on the sand, "remember we talked about that special surgery that could help you see some things?" The girl nodded, serious. "The doctors think you can have this surgery now. It would be a great opportunity. But the decision is yours." Sophia was silent for a moment, her fingers playing with the sand. "Will I be able to see you?" she finally asked. "Perhaps not clearly," Louise explained gently, "but you'll be able to see shapes, lights, and colors. I've always wanted to know what colors are like." "Possibly," Robert replied, "but darling, there are no guarantees. And it will be a bit scary at first." Sophia reflected with surprising maturity for her age. "I want to try," she finally decided. "Even if it's just a little bit, I want to see the world. I want to see both of you." Robert and Louise exchanged emotional glances, both deeply touched by the little girl's courage. "Then let's do it," Robert said, hugging her. "Together." That night, after Sophia fell asleep, Robert and Louise walked along the deserted beach, hand in hand planning the future, a future that, unexpectedly, included all 3 of them. "If the surgery is successful," Louise commented, "it will be as if Sophia is born again. And we'll be there to see her first steps in this new world," Robert completed, squeezing her hand. Under the starry sky of Cornwall, 2 unlikely people found each other through the love for an extraordinary child, forming a family that neither of them had planned, but that all desperately needed. University College London Hospital stood majestically in the urban landscape of London. On the 12th floor, in the newly inaugurated Centre for Advanced Visual Technologies, Sophia anxiously awaited the surgery that could change her life forever. The girl, now recently turned 8, sat on the hospital bed, her small legs dangling in the air, as she chatted animatedly with Dr. Andrew Boston, the neurosurgeon responsible for the procedure. "So, after the implant is working, will I be able to see colors?" she asked, the excitement evident in her voice. "It's possible, Sophia," the doctor replied gently, "but we need to be patient. At first, you'll probably only perceive differences between light and dark, then basic shapes. With time and a lot of training, you might be able to distinguish some colors." Robert and Louise observed the interaction, both trying to mask their nervousness. In the last 2 months since returning from the coast, their lives had become a flurry of medical appointments, preparatory exams and psychological counseling sessions. The decision to proceed with the experimental retinal implant had been made jointly, but concerns persisted. "The risks are minimal," Dr. Camilla Barnes had assured them during the last consultation. "The procedure is minimally invasive and Sophia is an ideal candidate." However, anxiety was inevitable. The surgery involved the implantation of a special electronic device, developed by British researchers in partnership with American and Korean scientists, which would directly stimulate Sophia's visual cortex, bypassing the retina damaged by prematurity. "It's time," the nurse announced, entering the room. "We need to prepare Sophia for surgery." Louise held her daughter's hand, trying to control the tremor in her own voice. "Remember what we agreed? You'll have a special sleep, and when you wake up, we'll be right here by your side. And maybe I can see you," Sophia added, her voice mixing hope and fear. "Even if it's just a little bit." "Exactly," Robert confirmed, leaning in to kiss the top of her head. "We'll be here the whole time." When the nurses took Sophia away, Louise finally let the tears fall. Robert hugged her, feeling his own heart racing. "Everything will be all right," he murmured, both to her and to himself. "She's strong." The next 6 hours were the longest of their lives. Each minute seemed to drag on endlessly as they waited in the waiting room. Mr. Edward Sterling, Robert's lawyer, appeared in the middle of the afternoon, bringing coffee and words of encouragement. "I thought you might need company," he explained. "And I also have news about the shared guardianship process. The judge has accepted the petition. The final hearing is scheduled for 3 weeks from now." Robert nodded, grateful, but his thoughts were entirely focused on the operating room where Sophia was. Louise, who had initially kept her distance from the lawyer, now treated him with cordiality. In recent months, an improbable friendship had blossomed between the three of them, united by Sophia's well-being. Finally, Dr. Andrew appeared in the hallway, still wearing his surgical cap. Robert and Louise immediately stood up. "The surgery was a technical success," he announced. "The implant is correctly positioned, and the initial electrical tests were positive." "And now?" Robert asked. "Now comes the most challenging part," the doctor explained. "Sophia will have her eyes bandaged for 5 days to allow for complete healing. Then we will begin the gradual activation of the device. It's a slow process that can take weeks or even months to achieve optimal results." Louise squeezed Robert's hand, seeking support. "When can we see her?" "She's in recovery now. In about an hour you can go in, one at a time." When he finally saw Sophia, Robert felt a pang in his chest. The girl looked so small and fragile in the hospital bed, with bandages covering her eyes and part of her head. He approached silently, gently touching her hand. "Robert?" she murmured, still groggy from the anesthesia. "I'm here, Princess. Did it work? Will I be able to see?" "The doctor said the surgery was perfect," he replied, controlling his emotion. "Now we just have to wait and be patient." A slight smile appeared on the girl's lips before she fell back asleep. Robert remained there, holding her hand, watching every breath until the nurse gently indicated it was time for Louise to enter. The next 5 days were for adaptation. Sophia was discharged 48 hours after the surgery, but needed to rest and keep her eyes bandaged. Robert transformed his apartment to facilitate her recovery, with the main bedroom converted into a hospital suite, equipped with remote monitoring supervised by the medical team. Louise practically moved into the apartment during this period, sleeping in the guest room, but spending most of her time by her daughter's side. Robert watched admiringly how she handled the situation with surprising strength and determination. "You're incredible," he commented late at night, as they shared tea in the kitchen after Sophia finally fell asleep. "I'm just doing what any mother would do," she replied, modest. "No, Louise, you're extraordinary." Robert touched her hand across the table. "I've spent my whole life seeking excellence, surrounding myself with competent people, but I've never met anyone with your resilience." Louise smiled, her eyes meeting his. Maybe we have more in common than it seems at first glance. Both of us would do anything for that girl in there. That night, when Louise fell asleep on the living room sofa while reading an article about visual rehabilitation, Robert covered her with a blanket and watched her for a few minutes. Something had definitely changed between them since that kiss on the beach. A growing intimacy, filled with small gestures of affection and moments of complicity. They hadn't yet defined what they were to each other, but they knew it was more than just partners in raising Sophia. Finally, the big day arrived. The full medical team was present for the first activation of Sophia's retinal implant. Dr. Camilla explained the process to the girl, who was visibly nervous but determined. "We'll start with very simple stimuli, Sophia," the doctor said. "First, I'll remove the bandages and put on a pair of special glasses that communicate with the implant. Then we'll gradually activate the system." "Will it hurt?" Sophia asked, squeezing Robert's and Louise's hands who were on either side of her. "It shouldn't hurt, but it might feel strange. You might feel tingling or see flashes of light. If it becomes uncomfortable, let me know immediately and we'll stop." Slowly, Dr. Camilla removed the bandages. Sophia's eyes remained closed, an instinctive reaction after days in darkness. Then she put on the special glasses, a light titanium frame with darkened lenses and a small processing module attached to the side. "Ready?" the doctor asked, holding a tablet that controlled the system. Sophia nodded, her hands squeezing her parents even tighter. "I'm activating in 3, 2, 1. A slight hum emanated from the device. Sophia gasped, her lips parting in surprise. "What are you feeling?" Dr. Camilla asked, attentive. "It's strange," Sophia replied, her voice trembling. "There's something different. Are you seeing anything? Light? Shadows?" Sophia frowned, concentrating. "I think so. It's like a flash, but it comes and goes." Over the next hour, the team carefully adjusted the device's parameters, seeking the ideal balance. Sophia gradually managed to identify the difference between light and dark environments when the room lights were turned on or off. "Is that light?" she asked, amazed, when Dr. Camilla shone a flashlight towards her. "It's so bright!" Louise couldn't hold back her tears. Robert, normally so composed, also felt his eyes welling up. "Yes, darling," Louise confirmed. "That's light." In the following days, training continued. Sophia learned to interpret the new visual stimuli, a slow and at times frustrating process. There were moments of progress, such as when she managed to identify the silhouette of a large ball against a light background, and moments of setback, when the overload of information left her with intense headaches. "It's normal," reassured the visual therapist Renata. "Her brain is learning a completely new language. It's like she's learning to walk at 8 years old." 1 month after the initial activation, Sophia could identify basic shapes and detect movement. The medical team was impressed with her progress, attributing it not only to the technical success of the implant, but also to the girl's extraordinary determination. "She's going far beyond our expectations," Dr. Andrew commented during a follow-up consultation. "If she continues at this pace, in a few months she could have quite useful functional visual perception." That night, after putting Sophia to bed, Robert found Louise on the apartment balcony, watching the city lights. He approached silently, hugging her from behind. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How life comes full circle," she replied, leaning back against him. "6 months ago I was at rock bottom, without hope. Now, I'm seeing my daughter see for the first time. I'm studying, working on something I love, and," she hesitated, turning to face him, "I'm falling in love again." Robert gently touched her face. "I'm falling in love too," he admitted. "With you and with that little warrior in there." When their lips met, both knew it wasn't just a romantic moment. It was the sealing of a pact, a silent promise to build a future together that neither of them had imagined possible. The following week, during a particularly successful visual therapy session, Sophia asked a question that surprised everyone. "When are you two going to get married?" Robert and Louise exchanged surprised glances. The therapist smiled discreetly, pretending to adjust something on her tablet. "Why are you asking that, darling?" Louise questioned, trying to buy time. "Because you like each other," Sophia replied simply. "I can hear Robert's heart beat faster when you walk into the room, and your voice sounds different when you talk to him." Robert couldn't help but laugh at the girl's keen perception. "You're right, Sophia. I like your mother very much. So are you getting married?" Louise smiled, looking at Robert with an unasked question in her eyes. "Maybe," he replied, not taking his eyes off Louise. "If she wants to." "I want to see the wedding," Sophia declared with the determination that had become her trademark. "I want to see both of you. That's my new goal." That night, after Sophia fell asleep, Robert and Louise talked about the future. The shared guardianship hearing was scheduled for the following week, and both felt it was time to define what they wanted as a family. "Sophia is right," Robert said, holding Louise's hands. "We should make this official. We don't have to get married tomorrow, but I want you to know that I'm in this for good. I want you and Sophia in my life permanently." Louise smiled, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I never imagined that abandoning my daughter in that park," her voice faltered, "would be the beginning of something so beautiful. I still feel guilty sometimes." "You did what you believed was the only way to protect her," Robert replied, "and somehow it worked. Fate brought us together for a reason." As he hugged Louise, Robert thought of the incredible journey that had brought them there. From a casual encounter in a park to an improbable family, united by the love for an extraordinary child who, literally and figuratively, was beginning to see the world with new eyes. Hyde Park displayed its most vibrant colors on that spring morning. The trees swayed gently with the breeze, casting dancing shadows on the green lawn. A small gazebo had been set up near the lake, decorated with white flowers and blue ribbons. Chairs arranged in a semicircle accommodated about 50 guests, an intimate gathering of friends and family. It was exactly 1 year after the day Robert found Sophia lost in that same park. A year of profound transformations for everyone involved. And now, the place that had witnessed the beginning of that improbable journey would be the setting for its most significant celebration. In Robert's apartment, the excitement was palpable. Sophia, now 8½, sat patiently as a professional makeup artist applied light makeup to her face. Her eyes, once empty of expression, now moved constantly, absorbing the visual world that was gradually revealing itself to her. "Don't move so much." "Darling," the makeup artist gently asked. "Sorry, I'm just not used to seeing so many colors yet," Sophia explained, fascinated by the mirror in front of her. "The lipstick is red, isn't it?" "Red is my favorite color." Over the past 6 months, Sophia's progress with the retinal implant had surprised even the most optimistic doctors. After the initial phase of perceiving only light and shadows, she began to distinguish basic shapes, then more complex silhouettes. The big leap occurred 3 months after the surgery, when she managed to identify her first color, the intense blue of a ball during visual therapy. "Blue," she had declared with absolute certainty. "That's blue! Mummy always said the sky is blue, and now I know what it's like." From that moment on, her visual world expanded rapidly. Red, yellow, green. Each new color was met with exclamations of joy and long sessions exploring objects that displayed it. Her ability to interpret visuals improved daily, although her vision was still significantly limited compared to people without visual impairment. Sophia can see approximately 15% of what a person with normal vision sees, Dr. Andrew had explained during the last consultation. Mainly shapes, basic colors, and movement. Fine details are still a challenge, and her depth perception is limited. But considering she never saw before, it's an extraordinary advance. In another room of the apartment, Louise was getting ready with the help of Mrs. Jenkins and Martha, Robert's secretary who had become a close family friend. The simple and elegant white dress contrasted beautifully with her olive skin. "Are you nervous?" Martha asked, adjusting the veil. "A little," Louise confessed. "It still feels surreal. Of all the twists and turns I imagined for my life, this certainly wasn't in the script." "The best stories are never in the script," Mrs. Jenkins philosophized, adjusting the hem of the dress. "They are the ones life writes when we least expect it." In his study, Robert adjusted his tie in front of the mirror. Beside him, Edward Sterling, his lawyer and now best man, offered a glass of whiskey. "To calm the nerves," he explained, with a smile. "I'm perfectly calm," Robert replied, although his hands betrayed a slight tremor. "Of course you are," Edward quipped. "It's just the most important day of your life. The man who swore he'd never marry, never have children, about to do both at once." Robert smiled, acknowledging the irony of his situation. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be here today, I would have laughed in their face. He took a sip of whiskey. But now I can't imagine my life any other way. That's what happens when we find the right people, Edward commented. They change our priorities, our plans, our worldview. Our worldview, Robert repeated thoughtfully. Interesting you use that expression today. The wedding in the park was exactly as they had planned, simple, intimate, and deeply meaningful. Sophia, radiant in her pink bridesmaid dress, proudly carried the rings. Her eyes, protected by special glasses that regulated light intake, moved constantly, capturing every possible detail of the ceremony. When Louise walked to the improvised altar to the sound of a string quartet, Robert felt his heart quicken. She was stunning, but it wasn't just her physical beauty that moved him. It was everything she represented: strength, resilience, unconditional love. A woman who had faced the unthinkable to protect her daughter, and who, even in the darkest moments, had never lost her capacity to love. Vows were exchanged with genuine emotion, without excessive formalities. Robert promised to be not only a husband to Louise, but also a true father to Sophia. Louise, in turn, thanked him for the new beginning they had found together. "You taught me that even in the darkest moments there is hope," she said, her voice choked with emotion, "that from the most desperate decisions can be born the most unexpected miracles." After the ceremony, during the small outdoor reception, Sophia asked for everyone's attention. Stepping onto a small platform, the girl held an envelope in her hands. "I prepared a surprise for you," she announced, visibly moved. "Since I started seeing a little, I've been secretly practicing something with the help of my therapist." She opened the envelope and took out a sheet of paper. Carefully, she positioned it at a specific distance from her eyes, the ideal distance her doctors had determined for her best visual acuity. "This is my wedding gift. A letter I wrote myself, and am reading with my own eyes." An emotional silence filled the air. Robert and Louise, hand in hand, watched their daughter with tear-filled eyes. "Dear Mummy and Daddy," Sophia began, reading slowly with small pauses between words. "Today is a very special day for our family. We are finally officially what we already were in our hearts, a real family." Sophia paused, carefully turning the paper. "Mummy, you were always my light when I lived in darkness. You taught me to be strong and never give up. Daddy, you appeared in our lives like an angel when we needed it most. You showed me that family isn't just who is born together, but who chooses to stay together." Her voice trembled slightly, but she continued, determined. "Now that I can see a little of the world, I know it's even more beautiful than I imagined. But the most beautiful thing I've ever seen is the two of you, looking at each other with so much love. Thank you for teaching me that. Even when everything seems impossible, miracles happen. With all my love, Sophia." There wasn't a dry eye at the reception when she finished. Robert and Louise rushed to hug her, forming a perfect circle of love and gratitude. "How did you manage to do this without us knowing?" Louise asked between tears of joy. "Dr. Renata helped me," Sophia explained proudly. "We practiced during extra-visual therapy sessions. I wanted it to be a special surprise." "It was the most precious gift we could receive," Robert affirmed, hugging her again. The party continued until dusk, when the London sky offered a spectacle of colours that Sophia could appreciate for the first time. Sitting between Robert and Louise, she pointed animatedly at the clouds tinged with orange and pink. "It's so beautiful," she exclaimed repeatedly. "It's like music for my eyes." Later that night, after leaving Sophia with Mrs. Jenkins for their first wedding night, Robert and Louise walked along the same path in the park where everything had begun. The place was almost deserted, lit only by the soft glow of the lampposts. "Do you believe in destiny?" Louise asked as they walked hand in hand. "I never did," Robert admitted. "I always thought we built our own path through calculated decisions. And now?" He smiled, stopping to face her under the light of a lamppost. "Now I can't explain how the universe conspired to put Sophia in my path that specific afternoon, on that specific bench in the park. Of all the people who could have found her, I was the one there." "Maybe some things are just meant to be," Louise reflected. "Maybe some souls are destined to meet, no matter how improbable the circumstances." "Three lost souls who found their way together," Robert agreed. As they kissed under the starry London sky, in the same park where their journey had begun, both felt they had finally come home. A home built not of bricks and concrete, but of courageous choices, second chances, and unconditional love. The next day they would leave for a honeymoon on the south coast of England, taking Sophia to see the crystal-clear beaches of the Isle of Wight. The girl was especially excited to see the ocean again, this time with her own eyes. Life would not always be easy. Sophia's retinal implant would require constant maintenance and periodic updates as technology advanced. Her vision would never be perfect, and there would be unique challenges in her education and development. Louise would continue her studies in special education, determined to help other children like Sophia. Robert had learned to balance his professional responsibilities with his new family life, delegating more responsibilities at the company to be present for important moments. But together, they had discovered a fundamental truth, that the most important vision was not that of the eyes, but that of the heart. And in that aspect, their improvised family saw with perfect clarity. A few months later, during a family dinner, Sophia made a surprising announcement. "I've decided what I want to be when I grow up," she declared, while savoring her favorite dessert. "And what is that?" Robert asked, curious. "I want to be a scientist and invent things to help children like me," she replied with conviction. "I want to create better implants that make people see even more." Louise smiled, touched by her daughter's ambition. "That's a wonderful goal, darling. But in the meantime," Sophia continued with a mischievous smile, "I was thinking that maybe I could get a little brother or sister to practice my caregiver skills." Robert choked on his wine, while Louise laughed at her husband's astonished expression. "You never cease to surprise us, do you?" Robert commented, recovering. "Life is full of surprises," Sophia wisely replied. "You yourself taught me that." "Daddy," looking at his family gathered around the table, the wife whom destiny had brought him through the most improbable circumstances, and the daughter who had transformed his worldview, Robert knew that the greatest adventure of his life was just beginning. And so it was that a casual encounter in a park transformed into the most extraordinary love story, proving that sometimes when we least expect it, life puts us exactly where we need to be, to find exactly who we need to find. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Robert, Louise, and Sophia has touched your hearts deeply. To continue this emotional journey, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories about new beginnings and second chances. Find it by clicking the button on the left. If this narrative of love and overcoming warmed your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity and beauty of life. Share with us in the comments, what moment in this story moved you the most? We eagerly await your impressions.